Have you ever thought about the number of women that shape our political landscape? It's a question that may seem simple on the surface, but it opens the door to a vast and complex reality. A reality that is still, unfortunately, marked by gender disparity in politics. Globally, despite making up approximately 50% of the world's population, women hold less than a quarter of parliamentary seats. The number drops even further when we look at positions of power, such as heads of state or government, where women account for less than 10%. These numbers are not just statistics, they are a stark reminder of an imbalance that runs deep in our societies. Now, to understand the present, we must look at the past. Historically, women's involvement in politics was limited, if not outright prohibited. In many parts of the world, women had to fight tooth and nail for their right to vote, a right that many of us take for granted today. It's a fight that lasted for centuries, and it's a fight that women are still waging in some corners of the world today. But it's not just about the right to vote. It's about the right to representation, the right to have a say in the decisions that affect our lives, the right to lead. And while we've come a long way since the days when women were barred from political participation, the journey is far from over. In the face of these realities, it's easy to see why some might argue that the political field is not truly leveled for women. It's not enough to simply break the glass ceiling. We need to dismantle the entire structure that allows such a ceiling to exist in the first place. So, is the political field truly leveled for women, or is there a hill yet to climb? While we've made significant strides towards gender equality in politics, these numbers suggest that there's still a long way to go. And if history has taught us anything, it's that change is possible, but it requires persistence, courage, and a commitment to challenging the status quo. On one hand, many argue that women have already earned their place in politics. Indeed, this perspective is not without its merits. Over the years, we've seen an increasing number of women stepping into the political arena and not just participating, but leading and making significant changes. Let's take a moment to appreciate the achievements of these trailblazing women. From the indomitable Margaret Thatcher, who broke barriers as Britain's first female prime minister, to Angela Merkel, who has been steering the ship of Europe's largest economy for over a decade. And let's not forget the formidable Hillary Clinton, who, regardless of one's political leanings, made history as the first female presidential nominee of a major party in the United States. These women and many others have proven that gender does not determine one's capability to lead or to affect change, and their accomplishments have made it easier for the next generation of women to envision themselves in positions of power. But it's not just about the individuals. Let's look at the larger picture too. Various laws and regulations have been implemented worldwide to ensure equal rights for women in politics. In some countries, quota systems are in place to guarantee women's representation in parliament. Moreover, societal perceptions are also changing. Today, more people than ever before believe in the capacity of women to lead. We're seeing a shift in attitudes, with people recognizing that having women in politics isn't just about equality, it's about diversity of thought, it's about bringing different perspectives to the table, and it's about reflecting the population that these political bodies serve. So yes, women have come a long way in securing their place in politics. They have shown that they can lead, they can influence, and they can change the world. Thus, the advocates of this perspective see the glass ceiling as nothing but shattered fragments of the past. Conversely, others argue that the fight for women's equal rights in politics is far from over. Despite the strides we've made, some feel that the political arena remains a battleground, riddled with age-old biases and stereotypes that continue to affect women's participation and representation. Let's unpack this. We still live in a world where gender biases persist, often subconsciously. Women in politics frequently find themselves having to prove their competence and capability in ways their male counterparts rarely do. They're scrutinized not just for their political acumen, but also their appearance, their tone of voice, even their choice of clothing. This kind of gender bias can create an environment that's daunting for women, deterring many from stepping into the political sphere. Then, there's the issue of stereotypes, the deeply ingrained societal belief systems that pigeonhole women into certain roles. Often, these stereotypes paint women as less decisive, less assertive, less leader-like than men. These perceptions can affect voters' confidence in female politicians, and in turn affect their chances of being elected. Let's not forget representation. Even though we've seen a rise in the number of women in politics over the years, there's still a significant gap when it comes to their presence in certain political spaces. For instance, as of now, less than a quarter of all national parliamentarians are women. That's a stark underrepresentation that speaks volumes about the challenges women continue to face in achieving political parity. In essence, these counter-arguments suggest that the fight for women's equal rights in politics is ongoing. The landscape has certainly improved, but it's clear we still have a long way to go. For these individuals, the glass ceiling is still a tangible barrier, albeit one with cracks. And while those cracks are indeed signs of progress, they're also reminders that we need to keep pushing, keep challenging, keep fighting, until that glass ceiling shatters completely. For these individuals, the glass ceiling is still a tangible barrier, albeit one with cracks. Now, what does the conservative perspective say about this issue? Conservatism, as a political and social philosophy, promotes retaining traditional social institutions. It's a viewpoint that respects the wisdom of ages and prefers gradual change to radical shifts. So how does this philosophy interpret the issue of women in politics? Well, first and foremost, the conservative viewpoint champions the idea of merit over identity. The belief is that a person's qualifications, experience, and abilities should dictate their success rather than their gender. And this principle applies as much to politics as it does to any other field. The idea isn't to discourage women from entering politics, but rather to encourage everyone, regardless of their gender, to prove their merit. That said, the importance of tradition is another key aspect of the conservative perspective. Politics, like many other institutions, has a long history, and this history is often male-dominated. However, this doesn't mean that the doors of politics are forever closed to women. Rather, it's a recognition that change, especially significant societal change, takes time. It's a gradual process, not an overnight transformation. Despite this, conservatives do acknowledge the progress that has been made. Women have come a long way, breaking barriers and shattering glass ceilings. Today, we see more women in politics than ever before, their voices echoing in the corridors of power. But it's also important to recognize that challenges still exist. There are still hurdles to overcome, biases to break, and glass ceilings to shatter. In essence, the conservative perspective acknowledges both the progress made and the road ahead. It's a viewpoint that balances the recognition of advancements with the understanding that there's still work to be done. It's not about undermining the achievements of women or denying the struggles they face. Instead, it's about fostering a culture of meritocracy, respecting the importance of tradition, and acknowledging the ongoing journey towards equality. From the conservative lens, the situation is not black and white, but rather a spectrum of grays. So, where does that leave us on the question of women's place in politics? As we've journeyed through this discussion, we've unearthed some significant insights. We've witnessed the transformation of politics from a largely gendered space to a more inclusive realm. We've seen women not only standing shoulder to shoulder with men, but also breaking barriers and setting new paradigms. Yet we've also recognized that the fight for equal rights is far from over. The battlefields may have changed, but the war wages on. Women are still underrepresented in politics. They face unique challenges and biases that their male counterparts often do not. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about the narrative, the representation, and the influence. It's about shifting perspectives and dismantling long-held stereotypes. It's about creating a political landscape that respects and values the voices of all its citizens, regardless of gender. And what of the conservative perspective? One may argue that the push for women in politics should be a natural progression, not a forced agenda. That said, acknowledging the existence of barriers and working towards removing them does not equate to advocating for preferential treatment. It's about advocating for fairness, for equal opportunities. The debate on women's place in politics is complex and multifaceted. It's not a black and white issue, and it's certainly not one that can be resolved overnight. It requires continued dialogue, understanding, and most importantly, respect for differing viewpoints. But remember, forming an opinion is not about choosing a side. It's about understanding the nuances, examining the facts, and making an informed decision. It's about being open to change, yet firm in your convictions. So let's keep this conversation going. Let's continue to question, to challenge, and to push boundaries, because whether the political field is leveled or not, the conversation, the debate, and most importantly, the progress must continue.